Milchick's crazy dance, James' secret children, and the mural that could suggest that the board are the Egan's in chips. Let's break down everything from the finale of Severance Season 2. If you're new here, I'm Markndrew, nice to meet you, and I've been making loads of theories, predictions, and breakdowns across social media, and now it's time to tie it all in together into the finale. So this is going to be part one because there's so much to unpack, and I'm going to go into deep detail. So the first thing we hear is, do you remember the last thing you said to me? This is an obvious callback to the finale of season 1, where Innie Mark realized that Miss Casey was Outie Mark's wife. I also just want to point out when Miss Casey said to Mark she would be leaving, essentially this could have been our first hint of emotions transcending Severance, and it could also have been why Cobell was watching and smiling. Seeing how cold she is, this could have excited her in some way as the creator. The freak. We get another look at the room and everything seems to be in perfect symmetry and balance, which reminds me of how Helena cut the egg in the previous episode, but it could also represent that children are born with balanced tempers, so you have woe, frolic, dread and malice. What's worrying here is that Cobell keeps asking Mark if he's finished Cold Harbor, and seeing as we know it's just another room where Gemma becomes a new Innie, it solidifies removing the severance chip, which results in death. When Mark asks who they will be saving, Cobell says Miss Casey, then Devin jumps in quick like, Gemma, don't you ever in your life disrespect my babes. Which reminds me of when Miss Wong belittled Innies. Like, this is something they've clearly taught at the Metal Egan school. Then we get a direct reference to Mark knowing about Irvin's drawings when Cobell describes the long black hole. If my memory's correct, that's from Dylan, who told the team, and you know, Irvin hugged Dylan and told him when he wanted to quit over Bert. Now, we get Helly's first encounter with Jay Megan since the season 1 revelation, where we actually learned that the chips have been in development for decades, potentially 2 or more, tying into Bert letting it slip over dinner that he worked for Lumen 20 years ago, despite the first 7th floor only coming roughly a decade ago. Then we get the maddest revelation. So James just outright says he doesn't love his daughter Helena and that she stopped being like Kit as she got older. Now the question is that good or bad? I think it means she has no relationship or urge to develop. In the finale, James drops a crazy line saying he wishes he had others in the shadows, but Kit wasn't in them either. So is he outright saying he had other children? My first guess is Rick and Hell, and this actually answers why Rickon creates so many motivational books. Like, think about it. Lumen has the 4 tempers and Rickon made the 5 U-types: Coward, Warrior, Dove, Scribe and Vestal. It's like he wanted to prove to his estranged dad that he was worthy of the family name, and could also explain how we got the funding for 5 books, access to the birthing cabins, and all of the goat memorabilia around this house. It could also explain why he was hosting the foodless dinner as some kind of Lumen ritual. As we know, James only drinks tea, he doesn't like to eat, so he's trying to be like his dad. And it also may align with this idea of having 3 beds the child can move as they grow up in, which is an idea he got from a friend. But don't forget, we also hear Milchick telling Miss Wong that she will be moving with her bed. So is this the exact same principle? Furthermore, is there an equivalent of the Metal Egan School for girls for men? I don't think Devin revealing Rickon was an amazing climber like a goat was a coincidence at all, seeing how symbolic the goat is for the tempers, which we've seen darted across Lumen. Too long didn't listen, Rickon is James' secret son, which would also tie in with the intro when Mark signs into Lumen. It turns into a goat and then the actor who plays Rickon, his name comes up. But what do you think? James then says he sees Kieran Helly before she tells him that he is going to burn and reveals that tomorrow is a special day. I believe tomorrow is meant to be the day of the revolving, when Mark finishes Cold Harbor, which James first mentioned in the season 1 finale. Annoyingly, we miss an explanation of Cold Harbor here, but Mark says once they complete it, they will do a test, then X out Gemma, because they'll remove the chip from her head. The question is, will they use her body as a vessel? What I like here is that Cobell then actually explains the exit plan, so Devin and Cobell would be expecting Gemma to come up and out of the exit stairwell. I know online there's a lot of conversation about how can Gemma even get out of the building, and it also seems that the severance chips are only attuned to specific floors, so this will be our entry for season 3, which makes even more sense as this is the stairwell we saw Helly try to escape in the first ever episode. When Mark the Innie gets to details, he does like a childish laugh because he's technically a child, but Cobell says it doesn't have to be the end of him. So is this hinting that Innies are just coding in the chips and can be given artificial bodies? Mark asks what happens if Lumen ends, and I think this is actually going to be a major plot point in season 3, because Innie Mark is realizing that without Lumen he will no longer exist, but we'll touch on that in a minute. I love the argument that saving one person will end the life of every other Innie, because it takes us back to to the biblical themes this show has been presenting, in which Mark is almost this Jesus-like figure, except he wouldn't be dying for everyone. He would in essence be the one eliminating everyone. When the Marks speak, we can really tell that Innie Mark is quite childlike, and Outie Mark just really doesn't care about anyone. Outie Mark is even speaking like he has created a parasite, and he's talking about making it right by wiping him out of existence. Whereas Innie Mark is just kind of like, wait, why did you get to love and I have to pass over? We then get these dual statues, which I think match the endless phrase we hear, children of Kyr. And I'm going to guess the woman next to him is Imogene. Makes sense because they met on the factory floor, which we saw Cobell visit back in episode 8 when she done her 9-hour drive to Salt's Neck. When Innie Mark explains that he doesn't want to perish, Outie Mark just starts finding ways to manipulate him through reintegration, but obviously Mark Innie has a stink face because he's not in need yet. No man can have 2 wives and survive. Yeah, law of life. I also love this transition where they're on opposite couches and the conversation starts overlapping itself as they discuss sharing a body. Mark is like, bro, why am I bargaining my body like this is vintage? Mark then has a major confession that he became addicted to the dark stuff and was showing up to work out of his mind, which led to him getting fired. Many of us have suspected he had a problem with the bottles, and he even mentioned it previously when he said if he could trade anything to get Gemma back, he would. But when Mark Outie mentions that Mark Innie has a relationship with Helena Egan and he calls her Helene, Mark's Outie is fuming, and it just shows us how selfish Outies are, which ties back to What's Hollow and Helena's manipulation. We then get the best revelation from Cobell, telling us the numbers are Gemma. The numbers are allowing for different coding to be put into Severance chips because the numbers are the tempers. Now, I hypothesize each program is a different combination of the emotions. Cobell says something interesting here. So they are the building blocks of the mind and a new consciousness for a new Innie. So is it possible that they are trying to recreate someone's mind using the building blocks? Raising another question, have they already completed other consciousnesses? I don't know if that's a word, but you get it. Perhaps the board, because like we heard at the start of the season, one of the Markndrew refinement teams in another location said the Kyrs are animatronics. And are those animatronics actually the completed Egans just waiting for real bodies? So could these rebuilt consciousness be the board members? While Mark is protesting, Cobell does warn him that once they are done, they will discard him like a skin husk because he has served his purpose. Guys, I hate to say it, but Mark was a means to an end. But if Lumen haven't created human bodies yet, are Severance chips the next best thing? Something weird is when Cobell says she cares for Mark, but like, why? I think that's a thread we're going to explore in season 3. I love this new tapestry called the Exalted Victory of the Cold Harbor. So on the left, we can see everyone that's held significance to Mark, both as an Innie and an Outie. We have the original Markndrew team, Rickon who made a deal with Lumen, with Devon holding their baby Eleanor. Then in the back, we have the replacement Markndrew team, Miss Casey, the optics and the design team. One thing which is weird to me is that Cobell was on the side with Mark and not Lumen. On the right hand side, we have the Lumen staff, the 4 tempers, and the weird ghost-like duplicates we saw in What's Hollow. My attention goes straight to the top where we get the Egans, but one detail I noticed is that they are in a literal cloud on top of a waterfall. Is this to show us that the Egans live on in the cloud, just like how Cobell told Mark that the numbers were Gemma? Have the Egans been brought back as the board through a recreation of their consciousness to lead the company? This could be who Natalie is talking to through the earpiece and explain why they're never physically there during important meetings or at the presentation in the season 1 finale. This statue of Kyr is so freaky, but it's a nice little callback to the Markndrew team in the first episode of the season, and the letter inside saying the founder wants to witness, which could actually hint that Kyr's consciousness is in the animatronic. And the waffle in the card, like, it reminded me of that dance Dylan got in season. That was saucy. A nice little Easter egg or warning sign is the Lumen logo turns into an eye for a second, almost as if to say the company are always watching, or a nod to the Dell at their eyes with the slight blue tinge. Gemma being given the clothes she wore when she was abducted is definitely designed to ensure she has every single emotion running through her body, as Cold Harbor will test the tempers. Mark now clearly knows that Lumen's goal is to extract the chip from Gemma, and this also tells us once someone becomes severed, there is no going back. It's literally a life sentence. And I love this scene because we get Helly trying to convince Mark to finish the file and take down Lumen. I'm not sure why they think completing Cold Harbor just finishes the company though. But then Mark says he wants to live with Helly, and it's going to shape the whole episode because Helly admits that she is Helena and she knows it could never work. What I love about this frame of Milchick is that he's drenched in blue lighting, but we can see sparks of red bursting through the different angles. Normally I'd say that's to depict evil, but we know blue is evil. So in this case, red shows his good and genuine care for the Innies, something we've seen throughout the show. After Milchick does the most insane sprint on the planet, we get Dylan in part of the prism-shaped room, and what I noticed is this carved darker section which looks like an iceberg, something Milchick had a paint thinking of on his wall. Could that represent that innies are just the tip of the iceberg for the plans of the company? When Dylan reads the letter, it's like his outie actually realizes he's not been pulling his weight and realizes who he cares about, but this is going to fuel Dylan to take his spot, and I think it could lead to his motives in season 3, even though he's told he's welcome to leave. I think Mark and Helly's conversation is really sad. They think the equator is a building because their whole life has been the 7th floor. The only real view of the world was the Ortbo, but could also hint that they will escape in season 3. Then we get the directions drawn by Irv, which have come back in handy after being found at his funeral. That was a nice little setup right there, not gonna lie. But this whole sequence is just crazy. The way Milchick jumps in fist pumping, and now when Kier is moving and talking, part of me thinks that there is actually a consciousness in the statue. We also get a funny line here which triggers Milchick because he's told he uses too many big words and would have burst the appendix. When Milchick disrespects Kier's height, we get the statue shaking in anger, and it just makes me think, is this really Kier in the animatronic? Because why would his height anger him, and how could he shake? And then Milchella is one of the best things I've seen in a long time, but also there are even more rooms and floors hidden in the Severance building, which has us quizzing just how big this building is. Fun fact as well, Tremel Tillman used to be in the marching band in high school, and it said he was reluctant to do another dance performance because of the fight jazz, which is something he actually did in his audition and was just happy to have made Ben Stiller laugh. The song the band are performing has actually been released now, and it's called The Ballad of Ambrose and Gunnar, performed by the Jackson State University alumnus, so you can look that up if you want. But yeah, that's just me explaining the Severance season 2 finale. Come back for part 2, there's so much to unpack. I'm Markndrew, thanks for watching this, and if you've enjoyed, please be sure to like, share and subscribe to join the family.